Hello and welcome to this workshop on when survival runs the relationship. We're going to be taking a deeper dive into trauma, the adaptive child, and also the 5 losing strategies in relational life therapy. But before we get any further, I thought you might like to know a little bit more about me. My name is Dolma Beresford and I am a psychotherapist and couples counsellor, and I work in private practice in London, England. And I also facilitate and do workshops such as these, so I'm really happy to be here today. So my original training was in psychosynthesis, and I like to think of psychosynthesis as the original parts model. So it's a model of mindfulness and it's a model around parts. And then I went on to train with Janina Fisher in her trauma-informed stabilisation treatment, which again, mindfulness-based and parts-based. And I have done my training with Terry Real, and again, we've got a mindfulness and parts-based model, so they work together very well. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a fangirl, as I'm sure there are many other fangirls and fanboys here, but I have worked, as I said, with Janina Fisher and with Terry, and I guess that's why we're all here today. The reason why I wanted to bring Terry and Janina in is obviously because we are looking at RLT through a trauma-informed lens. And there's a nice story with Terry and Janina, which really speaks to relationality. And, you know, Terry and Janina, like all of us clinicians, we get together, we talk, we find out how each other are practicing, we learn from each other, we refine our own models, we refine the way we work. And in a dialogue that Terry had with Janina, he was talking about the parts that he uses in relational life therapy. He talks about the wounded child, the adaptive child, and in the past he talked about the functional adult. And it was in relation to speaking to Janina that he decided to change the name of that part from functional adult to wise adult, because with a trauma-informed lens, parts of us can look very functional when actually there's still more immature parts of us, whereas the wise adult really speaks to that prefrontal cortex part of us that when we work with clients, we really want to for them to engage with that part. So I just thought that was a nice introduction and really showing how clinicians speak, are relational, and how models get refined. So that was a little side note. But we're going to move into what are we actually going to explore in this workshop. So as mentioned, RLT, in my view, is a mindfulness-based and parts-based model, obviously a relational model. And we're going to really look at the survival responses and how they operate as very distinct subparts within the overarching umbrella of the adaptive child. And we're going to do a kind of a deep dive into survival responses. And in RLT, we're familiar with fight, flight, and fix. So we're going to have a look at those, but we're going to pay special attention to fix because it perhaps is underexplored. And fix is also known by a number of other names, including fawn, submit, please, appease. So this particular trauma response is quite nuanced. So we're going to have a real kind of look at that. And then we're going to also look at a trauma response which perhaps is less well known, which is called the attached needy part. And so we're going to look at those. Once we've explored those in more depth, we're going to then map them onto the 5 losing strategies in RLT, because obviously the adaptive child uses those losing strategies in relationship when it is in first consciousness. And having a trauma-informed lens hopefully will help us as clinicians, especially if we are working with clients that have a trauma history, to just be more nuanced, more attuned, able to work with them in a kind of subtle way, with delicacy. And this may really help us when we have clients that may present with what we may call borderline traits or disorganized attachment, when they have parts that can be quite fighty and equally have parts that are quite attached and needy. And so being able to understand these as a trauma response and how they fit into the losing strategies obviously will really help us working with couples. And as we know, trauma keeps couples in that first consciousness and those reactive cycles. So we really want to support the shift through psychoeducation around trauma, around parts, around survival responses, to help first of all create some consciousness with clients, and then that gives them choice. That's what we're really trying to help couples to do, is to do something different, to change the stance, to change the dance. And so I hope by the end of this workshop you will be leaving with some practical trauma-informed refinements that you will be able to take straight into your therapeutic practices.